I found out my wife had a second apartment by accident. Not through some dramatic affair reveal, not because of a text message, not even because someone warned me. It started with a receipt crumpled inside her coat while I was doing laundry. That stupid little receipt destroyed my life. The address printed on it was in another city, about 2 hours away from where we lived. At first, I honestly thought nothing of it. She traveled for work sometimes, marketing conferences, client meetings, random overnight trips that always seemed exhausting whenever she came home. But something about this one bothered me. Maybe because the receipt wasn't from a hotel. It was from a grocery store. And the items on it weren't random snacks or travel food. It was things people buy when they're settling in somewhere. Toothpaste, laundry detergent, coffee pods, frozen meals, candles. Candles. I remember standing there in the kitchen staring at the paper while the washing machine hummed behind me. My stomach did this weird drop I can't explain. I asked her about it that night. I tried to sound casual. "Hey, what's this place in Bremen?" She didn't even look up from her phone. "Oh, that." Too quick. "It's Claire's apartment." Claire was supposedly her old college friend. I'd never met her. Every time I asked, there was always some excuse. "She's going through a rough divorce. She needed help furnishing the place. She hates being alone." My wife finally looked at me and smiled. Not warmly, not lovingly, just enough to make me feel stupid for asking. "You're not seriously interrogating me over a grocery receipt, are you?" That sentence hit harder than it should have, because suddenly I felt embarrassed, paranoid, crazy. I apologized immediately. That's what our marriage had become without me realizing it. Every concern I had somehow turned into my fault. Still, something stayed stuck in my head. Later that night, while she slept beside me, I checked her location history for the first time in our entire relationship. And that's when I realized Bremen wasn't a one-time trip. She'd been going there for months, sometimes twice a week, sometimes overnight, sometimes for 3 days at a time. And the location she kept returning to wasn't an office. It was the exact same apartment building from the receipt. I remember my hands literally shaking while staring at the screen, because suddenly every weird thing from the last year started connecting. The distance, the coldness, the way she stopped touching me, the locked phone, the random showers immediately after coming home. I barely slept that night. But the worst part? At 3:14 a.m., while she thought I was asleep, my wife quietly got out of bed, walked into the hallway, and whispered into her phone, "I think he's starting to notice." Then she started laughing softly, and I stopped recognizing the woman I married. The next morning, she acted completely normal. That messed with me more than anything. She made coffee, kissed my cheek, asked if I could pick up bread after work like we were some happy couple in a furniture catalog. Meanwhile, I felt like I was sitting across from a stranger wearing my wife's face. I kept replaying what she said on the phone. He's starting to notice. Notice what? An affair? Another relationship? Something worse? I wanted to confront her immediately, but I knew she'd twist it around somehow. She always did. So instead, I watched. And once I started paying attention, it was horrifying how much I'd ignored. She kept her phone face down constantly. She started taking calls outside. She changed her password after 10 years of using the same one. And every time I asked simple questions, she answered like I was inconveniencing her.
"Why are you being weird lately?" she asked me that evening. I almost laughed. Weird. My wife had a mystery apartment in another city, and somehow I was the problem. "I'm not being weird," I said carefully. "You've just been distant." She sighed dramatically and leaned against the counter. "You know, this is exactly why I don't tell you everything. You overthink until it becomes exhausting." That word again. Exhausting. She used it whenever she wanted me to feel guilty for having emotions. Then she walked over, wrapped her arms around my neck, and suddenly switched tones completely. Soft, gentle, intimate. "I love you. You know that, right?" That's what confused me the most about her. She could become affectionate instantly, almost like flipping a switch, and every single time it made me question my instincts. For a second, I actually wondered if I was losing my mind, until I smelled a cologne on her jacket that definitely wasn't mine. Not subtle either, heavy, woody, expensive. I froze. She noticed immediately. "What?" I forced myself to shrug. "Nothing." But her eyes locked onto mine for half a second too long, and in that moment I knew she understood exactly what I smelled. That night, after she fell asleep, I made the decision that still makes me sick thinking about it. I went through her bag. I know Reddit's probably going to roast me for that, but at that point my gut was screaming at me. Inside, everything looked normal at first. Wallet, makeup, receipts. Then I found a second phone, hidden inside the inner zipper compartment. I genuinely felt my chest tighten. The phone was switched off. No notifications, no wallpaper, nothing. Just a black screen reflecting my own terrified face back at me. And taped to the back of it was a small white key tag with a handwritten number. 2B. Apartment 2B. My wife had a secret phone connected to a secret apartment. I sat there in the dark, holding it, while she slept peacefully beside me. Then the phone suddenly vibrated in my hand. One single message appeared on the screen preview before it locked again. "Miss you already. Last night felt too real." And underneath it was a photo preview of my wife, standing barefoot in a kitchen I had never seen before.
I didn't sleep at all after that. I just sat in the bathroom staring at the second phone while my brain tried to force everything into some logical explanation that wouldn't destroy me. Maybe it was emotional cheating. Maybe she had another guy. Maybe the apartment was some escape fantasy. But deep down, I already knew it was bigger than that. Because people don't buy toothpaste and laundry detergent for affairs. They buy those things for a life. The next morning, she woke up before me, or at least pretended to. I kept my eyes closed and listened to her moving around the bedroom quietly. Then I heard something that made my skin crawl. The sound of tape peeling. A few seconds later, her footsteps stopped. Silence. Then, "Where is it?" Very soft, barely above a whisper. I realized instantly she was checking the bag, looking for the phone. My heart started pounding so hard I thought she'd hear it, but I stayed still. After another few seconds, I heard her zip the bag shut again. Then she walked over to my side of the bed and just stood there. I can't explain how terrifying that felt. Not yelling, not panicking, just standing over me in complete silence. I almost opened my eyes out of pure instinct. Then suddenly she leaned down and kissed my forehead. "Sleep well?" she asked softly, like nothing was wrong. I nodded and forced a tired smile. She studied my face for a second too long before walking away.
The second she left for work, I called in sick. Then I turned the hidden phone back on. No password. That somehow felt worse, like she never imagined I'd find it. The messages loaded slowly, one after another, and every single one made me feel sicker. But the strange thing, there was no man, at least not at first. The conversations were mostly with three people saved only as initials: M, R, and L. The texts weren't romantic, they were logistical, cold, organized. Did he ask questions? You staying there Thursday? Keep the routine normal. Don't let him see the hallway closet. I remember rereading that last message over and over. Hallway closet. Then I opened the photo gallery, and that's when my entire understanding of my marriage started collapsing. There were hundreds of photos of the apartment. Not selfies, not romantic pictures. Documentation. Photos of furniture arrangements, photos of grocery lists, photos of specific outfits. And then I found folders named by dates. Inside each folder were photos of me, leaving for work, at the gym, walking into stores. Some were clearly taken from inside a car, some through windows. One photo was taken while I was asleep on our couch. I physically recoiled from the screen. My wife had been documenting my life. Then I found the audio recordings, dozens of them, short clips secretly recorded inside our house. Arguments, conversations, even random moments. I clicked one at random. It was my voice from 3 months earlier. I sounded exhausted. Why does it feel like you're hiding something from me? Then her voice answered calmly, because you're paranoid. And immediately after that, another voice quietly whispered near the phone, he's easier to manipulate than I expected. Not my wife's voice. Someone else was in the room that night. Someone inside my house, and I had absolutely no memory of it. I listened to that recording at least 20 times. Every replay made it worse. The second voice was low, calm, masculine. Not loud enough for me to notice in the original moment, apparently, but once you heard it, you couldn't unhear it. Someone had been inside my home while I was pouring my heart out to my wife, and she hid it from me. I checked the timestamp. 11:42 p.m., a Tuesday. I remembered that night perfectly because it was the same night she convinced me I needed therapy. I'm serious. After that conversation, she sat beside me on the couch, held my hand, and gently told me my anxiety was making me suspicious and emotionally unstable. At the time, I believed her. I actually apologized. Meanwhile, some random man was apparently standing nearby, listening to the whole thing. I started going through the recordings faster. Some were ordinary, others were horrifying. One clip captured my wife crying hysterically, saying I scared her during an argument. Except I remembered that argument clearly. I never yelled, never threatened her. I'd actually walked away because she kept provoking me. But in the recording, all you could hear was her crying. Then, suddenly, she stopped mid-sob and asked in a completely normal voice, "Did you get enough of that?" The man answered quietly, "Yeah, that works." I felt cold all over. Nothing in my marriage felt real anymore. Then I found videos. Most were short, but one was nearly 20 minutes long. The thumbnail showed the apartment in Bremen. I pressed play. The camera moved through a clean, modern apartment I'd never seen before. Gray walls, minimal furniture, huge windows overlooking the city. Then my wife appeared in frame. She was laughing, not fake laughing either, real laughing, relaxed, happy, happier than I'd seen her in years. And she looked different. Different clothes, different hairstyle, different body language, like she became another person there. The man filming said, "You're getting better at switching." Switching? She smiled and answered, "He still believes the depressed wife act." I paused the video instantly. I actually thought I might throw up, because for the last year, my entire life revolved around supporting her emotionally. Her burnout, her anxiety, her feeling disconnected from herself. I worked extra hours because she said she was struggling mentally. I cooked, cleaned, took care of everything because I thought my wife was falling apart. And now I was watching her mock it like it was theater. Then the video kept going. The man asked, "Do you think he'll ever figure out what this really is?" She shrugged. "Doesn't matter anymore. We already got what we needed." Needed for what? Before I could even process that sentence, another person walked into frame. A woman, blonde, maybe mid-30s. My wife walked over and kissed her. Not casually, intimately, comfortably, like they'd done it 1,000 times. The blonde woman noticed the camera and laughed. "Poor guy still believes you love him." Then my wife looked directly into the camera, and for one split second, her expression changed completely. Cold, empty. "He only sees what I want him to see." I shut the phone off immediately. My hands were numb, because at that moment I realized this wasn't just cheating. My wife had built an entirely separate identity, and somehow I was part of whatever game they were playing.
I spent the next 3 hours sitting in my car outside our apartment building, trying to decide whether I was insane. Seriously. Because nothing I was seeing made sense anymore. Who were these people? What did she mean by "we got what we needed"? Why were they recording me? Every answer only created worse questions. I almost drove straight to Bremen that day, but something stopped me. Instinct, maybe. Because if my wife was capable of lying this deeply for this long, then showing my hand too early could be dangerous. So instead, I did something I never thought I'd do. I started pretending. That evening when she came home, I hugged her. I asked about her day. I smiled during dinner. I even laughed at one of her stupid stories about a coworker. And the entire time, I watched her carefully. Now that the illusion was broken, I noticed everything. Every expression looked calculated. Every reaction felt measured. Even her pauses felt rehearsed. At one point, she reached across the table and touched my hand. "You seem better today," she said softly. Better. Like I was some unstable patient she'd been monitoring. "I guess I've just been stressed," I replied. Her eyes narrowed slightly. Not enough for most people to notice, but enough. Then she smiled again. "There's my husband." I almost lost it right there, because suddenly I realized something horrifying. She didn't love me. She managed me. That night, she fell asleep early, or pretended to. Around midnight, I quietly took her car keys and went downstairs. I know how that sounds, I do. But by then, I needed proof this wasn't some psychotic spiral in my own head.
Inside her car, everything looked clean and organized, too organized. Then I opened the trunk and found men's shoes, size larger than mine. Not new either, worn. There was also a gym bag containing men's clothes, a toothbrush, and prescription medication with the label peeled off. I stared at it for a long time. Then I noticed something tucked beneath the bag. A framed photo, not hidden carefully, just placed face down. I picked it up, and my stomach dropped. It was my wife standing beside the blonde woman in the video, both smiling in front of the Bremen apartment building. But that wasn't the disturbing part. The disturbing part was the child standing between them, a little girl, maybe 6 years old, holding my wife's hand. On the back of the frame, written in black marker, were the words, "Our family, finally complete." I swear my vision blurred for a second, because my wife and I had spent years trying for children, years, miscarriages, fertility appointments, therapy. I held her when she cried about never becoming a mother. And now I was staring at a photograph where she looked happier than I had ever seen her, standing beside a child I had never heard of. Then I heard footsteps in the parking garage. I froze. A few seconds later, I heard my wife's voice behind me. Quiet, calm. "You really shouldn't be digging through my things." I turned around slowly. She wasn't angry. That's what terrified me most. She was completely composed, standing there in pajamas and slippers like we were discussing bills or groceries. Then her eyes moved to the photograph in my hands, and for the first time since I'd met her, she stopped smiling.
We just stood there staring at each other in the parking garage. No yelling, no panic, just silence so heavy it felt hard to breathe. Then she slowly held out her hand. "Give me the photo." I didn't move. "Who is that little girl?" Her jaw tightened slightly. "You shouldn't have gone through my car." "That's your response?" She looked around the garage before stepping closer to me, and suddenly her voice changed. Soft, controlled, dangerous. "I need you to calm down before you make this worse." "Worse?" I actually laughed at that. "Worse?" I said. "You have a secret apartment, a secret phone, another family? She is not my family." The way she snapped that sentence out caught me off guard. It sounded emotional, real. For the first time in this entire nightmare, her mask cracked a little. I pointed at the photo. "Then what is this?" She rubbed her forehead like I was exhausting her again. "It's complicated." "No," I said quietly. "You're complicated." That hit something. I saw it immediately in her face, a flash of anger. Then just as quickly, it vanished. "I was trying to protect you." There it was, the manipulation, always repositioning herself as the victim, the protector, the reasonable one. "Protect me from what?" She hesitated, actually hesitated, and suddenly I realized she was choosing her next lie carefully. That scared me more than screaming would have. Finally, she sighed and leaned against the car. "You know how bad things got after the miscarriages." I stayed silent. "I felt trapped," she continued. "I didn't know who I was anymore. Bremen became an escape." "An escape with a child?" "She isn't mine." "Then whose is she?" No answer. I stepped closer. "Who are those people?" Still nothing. Then she looked directly into my eyes and said something that made my blood run cold.
"You are not seeing the full picture." I remember whispering back, "Then show me." Big mistake, because suddenly her entire demeanor changed again. She walked toward me slowly until we were inches apart. "You really want the truth?" she asked. "Yes, you won't survive it." I wish I could explain how she said that, not dramatically, not like a movie villain, almost sadly, like she genuinely believed it. Then she gently took the photo out of my hands, and before I could react, she snapped the frame against the concrete floor. Glass exploded everywhere. "You need to stop digging," she whispered. I stared at her. "You're scaring me." For a second, something flickered across her face. Guilt, maybe. Then her phone buzzed. She looked at the screen and immediately turned it away from me, but I caught one word before it disappeared. "Watcher." My wife looked back up at me, and suddenly she seemed nervous for the first time all night. Not nervous of me, nervous for me. "You need to go upstairs," she said quietly. "What? Now?" Then headlights suddenly appeared at the entrance of the parking garage. A black SUV rolled slowly inside. My wife's face went completely pale, and she whispered, "Oh no."